Welcome to How to Be the Difference with your hosts, Joanna and Paul. A podcast for the career you want, or maybe just that push you need. If you want to know what your dream career looks like, join us to get inspiration from industry experts that will make that dream career a reality.
Hello, and you are very welcome along to How to Be the Difference with your hosts, Paul Linsky and
Joanna Molina.
Joanna, how are you? Where in the world are you?
I'm currently in Miami and feeling 99% because I had the vaccine 2 days ago and still feeling the side effects, which essentially to me is like a hangover, but like a really bad, like the worst hangover probably I've had. Yeah, a bit of headache, but it was all fine and it's getting better now. And I'm glad I did it. What about you? Because you're super energetic today. What's going on with you?
Well, as we record this, it's a Friday, which is the best day of the week, you know. But besides that, no, nothing much. I'm still waiting on my vaccine. It's getting a bit quicker here in Ireland. Both of my parents have got their first jab, so I'm excited to hopefully, and things are getting back to normal a little bit. So it's a happier environment. Do you feel that?
Absolutely. Yeah, totally. Here in Miami, I have to say there's no such a thing. Like there's not a big sense of the virus. There's loads of people. Not everyone wears masks unless you go inside a store or something like that, or in a restaurant. No, I think, things seem to be going back on track. But you know who put the vaccine on me? It was the army. And I was like, oh, this is so cool. I want a photo, but no, they don't allow you.
You were saying there a second ago, it's like there was no like pat on the head, or there was no comfort whatsoever. It was just
no, nothing. I was like, can
no
you
lollipop?
give me a hug, lollipop, hug, anything, nothing. But anyway, today we have a really, really interesting guest, which we actually scheduled.
Before you go into your guest, we need to tell you the story of, like, you were in the hotel at the moment and the struggle to find Wi-Fi. Where did you record today's guest?
The floor in the middle of a corridor under the router, because I was running around this hotel to find the best place, and that was the best place. So yes, here I am in a corridor in the middle of a hotel in Miami.
I'm sorry for embarrassing you.
Apologies for my microphone or sound. It probably is not as good as when I'm at home.
It was a very stressful moment as we were, the minutes were flying by and Joanna was running around the hotel, but we made it happen. So who was our guest this week?
So today we have Andres Barreto. He's the managing director of Techstars Boulder Accelerator, previously seed investor and entrepreneur founder of First Rock Capital, Social Atom Group, Group Shark, Pulso Social, and Non-Swipe. With Social Atom Group, he has built or invested in over 85 companies. He's a founding fellow of nonprofit Coderise, which helps kids learn how to code. I personally know some really successful cases of kids that have been through the program, and is really inspirational. His Business Week's Top 25 Under 25, MIT Tech Review, Top 10 Innovators Under 35, Inc. Magazine Top 30 Under 30. Andres is a frequent speaker on the topics of entrepreneurship, product development, analytics, technical recruiting, and has participated in conferences throughout the US and LATAM. And also, Andres has a really, really beautiful family, I have to say. Andres, thank you so much for accepting our invitation. How are you? Whereabouts in the world are you?
Well, thank you so much for having me. And I am right now in Miami, Florida.
Wonderful. If you say right now, it's because you are about to move somewhere else, and that comes a little bit later. Tell us a little bit about your career, Andres. Tell us how did your journey started from the beginning, like a little bit about your background.
Yeah, sure thing. So I'm originally from Colombia, and when I was 12, I moved to the US. I moved to Florida and to Miami, and I did middle school and high school there. And for college, I applied and got into the engineering school at the University of Florida. And I remember, because I'm a minority, I'm a Latino in the US, there's not a lot of Latino engineers or Black engineers in the US because the system's designed to weed us out. And I remember that I went through a pre-university program for minorities. And it was a little bit discouraging because the statistics were, and we were sitting all in an auditorium, and I think the Dean of Engineering told us the reality of the statistics, which were, if you look to your left and you look to your right in this large auditorium, only one of you is going to make it. And then my first semester in calculus, I had a professor that was proud of only passing 10% of the students, that his class was so hard that only the top 10% of students passed calculus. And that's when I started realizing that the system is designed incorrectly. Imagine if you were a pilot and you said, or an airline, and you said, we only land 10% of the time. The others, we fail. Some 90% of the time the airplanes crash. Well, that's how education was set up in terms of my experience in engineering. And so, of course, I failed out of engineering and I ended up studying political science, primarily because at the time that I had to switch majors, because I got kicked out of engineering, I couldn't get into the business school because I didn't have calculus. I couldn't get into journalism because I already lost 2 semesters. It was too late for me to get into journalism. By the time I had done all that, I had created already my first technology company, and I had 30 employees. And I knew that not studying engineering was not going to deter me from building technology. And I figured, all right, well, if school doesn't want me to study engineering, that's fine. If the school doesn't want to let me study business, that's fine, because I'm doing engineering and I'm doing business. So I want to be a journalist. The school didn't let me do that because I was missing all the credits. So I created a media company to be my own journalist. And I figured, all right, so if I have my own media company, I already have my tech company, I'm doing the things that I was supposed to study, I'm learning by doing, then what is something that is intellectually interesting that I'll probably never get to apply, but it's still interesting to learn? And that was political science. So by the time I finished college, I had created a music technology company, which was Groove Shark, a music streaming service, a media company, just because I wanted to be a journalist, so I hired myself. and I had began this theory that you could build a technology company from anywhere, because the University of Florida is in Gainesville, Florida. It's a town of 100,000 people. 50,000 of them are students. And it's not Silicon Valley, it's not Boston, it's not California, it's not even Boulder or Denver. There was absolutely nothing, but I had access to Wikipedia and the internet and YouTube. And so how did I learn accounting? YouTube. How did I learn about the music industry? Wikipedia and books and YouTube. Pretty much we built that technology company by watching tutorials, reading the manual, reading on Wikipedia, and just applying it. After I finished my university, I started traveling throughout Latin America to meet entrepreneurs and to meet investors and to see if it was really possible to build a technology company from outside of Silicon Valley. And being a journalist really helped, because then I could get into conferences, expensive conferences for free as a journalist. And people want to meet with me because I was unknown. So people would meet with me because I would send them an email and say, hey, I'm in your town for X amount of days. Would you be up for an interview? And that's when I started meeting amazing entrepreneurs, traveling throughout Latin America. I think that's where I met Joanna too, in Startup Chile many, many years ago. And there was a point that I said, all right, cool. So it is possible. Let me prove and let me do it myself. And I built an ad network with an engineering team in Latin America. And we did business and we raised money in the US. We became the 3rd largest ad network for mobile web traffic after Google and Facebook. I showed that you can build a global product from Latin America. And that was OnSwipe. That's a company that I went through Techstars in 2011, the Techstars New York Accelerator. And it was in that program that I discovered the philosophy of give first, which is the main value that Techstars has. Give first without expecting anything in return. And if everybody does that, you just create a better world. And mentorship, which is very important. And I said, you know what, this is cool. Like, I like running companies, but I also want to help other entrepreneurs. And so I started helping entrepreneurs in New York and entrepreneurs in Latin America as a mentor, then as an advisor. And then I saw how successful they were, not because of me. They're just great entrepreneurs. And many of them went on to create multi-billion-dollar companies. And that's when I did the math and I said, well, if I had invested in their companies, I would do a lot better than what I'm doing with my own company because they're better entrepreneurs. So in 2013, I decided to become a full-time investor. I didn't have a lot of money. Actually, I had no money. So what I did is I stopped paying rent in New York and stopped paying taxes in New York because I moved out of New York. And with all that savings, I started investing in a few companies, learning how to do that. Then I partnered up with development banks, governments to set up accelerators and programs for entrepreneurs. And over 7 years, I built up a portfolio of 85 companies. And these companies, because the internet allows you to sell anywhere and live anywhere, the one thing that they were having problems with across the board is it wasn't even access to capital. It was access to engineering talent. And if we go back to the beginning of the story of how it's difficult or education set up to filter people out rather than to make it accessible to more people, you see this problem where there's very few minorities in Silicon Valley in software engineering roles, women. It's not very inclusive. And yet at the same time, companies complain that there's not enough engineers. And so that's why I created the nonprofit Coderise.org, was to help kids like myself that didn't have the fortune and the privilege to be able to migrate to the US, to be able to learn how to create technology from Latin America and make their lives better. Because now it doesn't matter your last name, what school you went to. I was able to raise $20 million of venture capital, and nobody asked me if I was an engineer or not. Nobody asked me where I was from. I just showed them my product. I had my growth. They liked it. I got money. But had I stayed in Latin America and had I wanted to create a business, like create a bank, well, you need to be wealthy. You need to have family with the right last name and the right contacts. If I wanted to create any business, it required connections and capital. But if I wanted to create software, you just need an internet connection and a computer. And so that's why we started Coderise, to help kids initially in Medellin. And then eventually Coderise started doing programs for all ages. So now we have programs for kids as young as 7 years old, all the way to adults as old as there's no limit. Because now we have a program called Holberton School that teaches computer science in 9 months in a way that is inclusive, not the way that I live, where they were proactively looking to exclude people. And the way that we do it with Holberton is if you go through the program, you don't pay anything until you get a high paying job. And it lasts 9 months, and we're seeing people land really high paying jobs, both in Colombia and in the US. They get higher paying jobs than if you had gone through traditional school for 4 or 5 years. And now you start to see the demand of startups where I was investing, hiring initially the kids that I was teaching how to code. And then those kids, they grow up, they work for these companies, then they create their own companies, and they hire the new generation of people that just learn how to code. And it creates this flywheel of opportunity and upward social mobility where you live, your background, your last name doesn't really matter. And that's when I joined Techstars last year to take it a step further, because what I was doing, was limited in scale. But with Techstars, we're investing about 500 companies per year, and companies from all over the world. It doesn't matter where you're at. We just want to find the best founders. And yeah, that's a brief yet a little bit long background.
That's amazing. I don't know where to go from here. There's so much information you've given us. It's been absolutely amazing. One thing I picked up on though was your comment on YouTube tutorials. That's got me out of many sticky situations in places where I hadn't got a clue what I was doing. So that's a great piece of advice. But I suppose I'll take it back to the start. You just decided to make a tech company first, was it?
Yeah, I created a
how'd you do that?
music streaming service. Well, because I got kicked out of engineering, got kicked out of business school, didn't get into journalism school. I had to find some electives and something I could get credits for. So I took an ethnomusicology class. Ethnomusicology is the study of history and culture through music, mostly non-Western American music. And even that, like I took an interest in the African diaspora and how it's all connected, from reggaeton to blues to jazz to salsa, son montuno. It's all connected because of the African diaspora. And I wanted to listen to all this music that was not in iTunes, that it was not in the record stores because the record stores had died. And I couldn't find it. So I created this service with my co-founders where you could listen to any song in the world for free. And what the app did is you download an app on your computer, it would scan your entire computer for MP3s, then upload it to the cloud. And now anybody could listen to anybody else's MP3s. This is back before Spotify. And the record labels didn't like that very much, obviously.
Yeah.
But that's how we got started.
That's amazing. It's kind of like LimeWire, I suppose.
Yeah, it was between LimeWire and Spotify. So a lot of the MP3s that users uploaded to GrooveShark were obtained allegedly through LimeWire and Shareza and Kazaa.
And did it bring any trouble at all?
Oh yeah, we got sued by every record label.
It's a life lesson though. It's good.
Yeah, it was an accelerated learning in litigation and law.
That's truly brave. And I'm very happy to have seen also the last, I don't know, like 10 years of your career and really been inspired by, as I said at the beginning, Coderise, and seeing people like kids that probably didn't have any hope really now succeeding in everywhere around the world is truly inspirational. What has been your proudest moment?
That is a great question. I have never stopped to think about it. But I think the case that best describes or best illustrates what I'm trying to do, and Joanna, you probably can recall the kid that we taught how to code in Medellin in 2016, and then he learned English in 3 months in order to pitch investors.
I love yeah.
With an intern from the intern group. That's how he learned English. And he created his startup. He raised a couple $100,000. Then he got into Berkeley's Accelerator. And now he's in Silicon Valley doing his second startup. But it just shows how software and technology can remove so many obstacles to opportunity that maybe if he hadn't discovered or had not had access to a network of entrepreneurs and programmers through Coderise, he would have done something else, or he wouldn't be where he is today in the tech world in Silicon Valley. So I think that life cycle is what I've been trying to replicate through investing in startups, through educating. Now we have 1,000 students in Coderise through the Holberton program, and we do boot camps where we've had over 2,000 people. So imagine if you did that at scale for people that were, didn't have the privilege to be born into the right family or in the right part of the world. You bring a little bit more of equity where your background or your geography should matter less. And one of the few good things of the pandemic is that it removed the geographic advantage that winning the lottery of birth could give you. So if you had fortunate enough to be living in New York or in Silicon Valley, then it was easier for you to access investors, let's say. But during lockdown and the pandemic, being in Brooklyn or being in Guadalajara was equally as distant because they were all a Zoom call away, equally as distant from customers and investors and talent and opportunity.
Amazing. And I guess I have a follow-up on something that you said earlier about choosing people. How do you choose people, both to access this program and to invest in it? What do they need to prove, or what do they need to have?
So the number one thing that I look for, and it's actually the same thing for whether it's the computer science education program with Coderise and Holberton, or it's the investment that I do through Techstars or Social Atom. More than background or skill, I look at a person's willingness and ability to learn quickly and to not wait for things to happen, but take ownership of what they want to do and figure it out quickly. And even if they're wrong, even if they're wrong 3 times in a row, because entrepreneurship is difficult and programming is difficult, it's okay to be wrong 3 times in a row or 6 times in a row, but make sure that that happens quickly. And that because you have that mentality of learning and taking any challenge on, you also have that perseverance of being able to tolerate frequent and constant rejection or failure. Because if you have that resiliency, just there, you're going to beat most everybody else that easily give up.
That's great advice for all the budding entrepreneurs out there. And I suppose, what does being entrepreneurial mean to you?
Well, I think entrepreneurship is like a great entrepreneur is the one that is able to observe problems that most people just get used to. And it's an ability that you can develop. It's like a muscle of not just settling for how things are, but identifying the problems that either you see or you live yourself, and rather than settling, saying, I can do something about it. And by having this small group of people that don't settle, that have a growth mindset and say, I don't know the answer, but I'm going to go figure it out. That's what moves progress forward. And if we provide access to opportunity, whether it's capital, connections, knowledge, to more people that don't have it, then the progress can go in the right way towards helping the underprivileged. And so that's why in Techstars, we're looking to fund even more historically overlooked founders. In my last program of 11 companies, 8 were led by women or minorities, or women that are also minorities.
That's really amazing. Tell us more about your role and what Techstars is trying to achieve.
Yeah, so Techstars is the largest accelerator program in the world by number of companies it backs yearly, and geographically diverse. Now geography matters a little bit less, but what we do is we give entrepreneurs investments of up to $120,000 for 6 to 9% of their company. And on top of the investment, there's a program where they get paired up with other leading entrepreneurs and mentors that become their supporters, allies, kind of like pseudo co-founders as well during for the period of 3 months. And they help entrepreneurs do the equivalent of 2 years worth of work in 3 months. So it's not that without Techstars, entrepreneurs couldn't accomplish X or Y, Z goal. It's that with Techstars, you're going to get there a lot faster. And we've been doing it since 2007. The market cap of the companies that have gone through our program received investment from Techstars in the outside the program exceeds $100 billion. And we have invested in over 2,500 companies.
Would you be able to kind of tell us what a successful company has looked like that you've seen come true?
Yeah, so through Techstars, Techstars has had so many companies go through the program, and from PillPack, which is a $1 billion company that does pharmacy delivery, like a pharmacy online, that got acquired about 2 years ago, all the way to drones that are doing delivery of medicine in Africa, all the way to business software like SendGrid, which is email software that got acquired for $2 billion, and DigitalOcean, which is servers. But those are the big, and ClassPass, which is for gyms. Those are like the big renowned companies right now. But we have all sorts of diverse companies. We have from in my current batch, I have a company that creates shoes for nurses to prevent infection. And during COVID, and even pre-COVID or post-COVID, if you look at nurses and doctors that work in the hospital, everything that they wear is to protect them from infection, except their shoes. So things as simple as that have a ton of opportunity. And any industry that you pick, any type of customer that you pick, there's something to be done there to make their lives better and create a great company around it.
And I suppose, like, what, as an investment kind of group, what do you feel like you're doing differently to everybody else out there?
What I think we do better than almost anyone out there is the fact that we do believe in mentorship. And by having a truly global network of mentors in any field, we also have space programs. So we have experts for space, we have experts for healthcare, we have experts for sustainability, and they're all very successful entrepreneurs that give first. They're not expecting anything in return from the entrepreneurs. They just want more entrepreneurs to be successful. So pre-installing this group of fans, and which are your mentors, that just multiplies the amount of opportunity that you get, because now you have 4 to 5 mentors that are working with you directly, amplifying all your efforts. And then you have the broader network of 10,000 entrepreneurs that have gone through the program, and then all the massive number of investors that invest in these type of companies. It just helps you amplify your efforts and tackle any challenge by having the right people in place so that you can do it a lot faster.
Yeah, I cannot agree more. I think the power of mentoring is enormous. I think in other episodes I've said that I personally have like 10 or more mentors. Some of them know they are my mentors. Some of them don't even know they are my mentors. Like you have acted as a mentor to me and the company in many, many cases. For people listening out there that are probably not part of the program, but would like to have a mentor or will benefit from a mentor, what will be your advice for them to get a mentor without necessarily calling officially you are my mentor, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's actually something that I have done as well. And even something that they don't know, but the way I look at it, I also have peer mentors. And ultimately is finding people that you can get emotionally engaged with your mission. And it could be from, I have mentors that help me in engineering. So I go to them frequently and I ask them, look, this is the problem that I'm tackling. This is how I'm thinking about tackling. What do you think? And then I'll get their feedback and then I'll update them. Oh, this is what I did. I followed that advice and this is what I learned. And so when you get feedback, you listen to the feedback, you do a curation of what you're going to execute. You can also ignore a bunch of feedback. That's fine too. But then you follow up to the mentor, even if they don't know who their mentor, and you keep them updated and you say, hey, this is what I learned. Because then what that does, it motivates the person helping you to keep helping you because they see efficacy, that they have an impact in what you're doing. And eventually, a lot of these people that I've looked up to that have been my mentors, peer mentors, because of that emotional connection to the mission of what I'm working on, I eventually, even if it takes 10 years, managed to get them involved as an investor, as a co-founder, as an employee, as an executive, as a board member. And if you just go out and try to find people and talk to people with a learning mindset. They might criticize what you're doing. They might tell you're doing it wrong. And that's just one data point. But you learn from that. And you might disagree, but now you understand the perception that other people have about what you're building or what you're doing or what you're trying to accomplish. And you keep that loop, that feedback loop of keeping them emotionally engaged.
Amazing. And I suppose like you've talked about kind of a roundabout way, diversity and inclusion, and being marginalized through most of your career and trying to start up, and mentioned change over the last while because of technology and how the world is kind of moving. It doesn't really matter as long as you know what you're doing or you're doing something valuable to someone else. Have you seen a significant change, or how much work is there left to do?
It is still embarrassingly bad. You still look at the numbers. So the numbers of investors that are from minorities or gender diversity, or like any way you slice it, is still low. The amount of capital that goes into companies led by diverse founders or underrepresented groups still embarrassingly low. And the challenge is that the brunt of the change, the effort to make this better, is falling on the minorities and the diverse backgrounds that are supposed to get the benefit. They're pulling the weight, and it's not going to be enough. So that's where equity comes in. And I am privileged because I am a dude. And even though I'm from Latin America, within Latin America, I am privileged because I don't come from a minority. I come from the majority in power, ethnically, culturally, economically. In the US, it's different, but I use the privilege that I have to bring people that don't have that privilege up to the access and opportunities that I have. And so that's why Gift First is so important. And so it requires the people that were fortunate enough to be born into privilege for them to use their privilege to help the ones that are less privileged. If it falls completely on the underprivileged, it is too heavy a lift to change a system that was designed to keep the underprivileged underneath. So there's still a lot of work to do. And the best way to do it is to solve for it is to hire people that come from underrepresented backgrounds and diverse backgrounds and invest in them. So that's what I do. I give them money. I hire them and then invest in their companies.
Amazing. And for those people, minorities that are listening to us, what will be your advice?
There is an expectation that you have to be 5 times better. And that's because the system was designed incorrectly. You have to do double the effort to get the same result. And that is something that sometimes brings people down. And it discourages people from continuing in tech or becoming an engineer, or becoming an entrepreneur. It is okay to not be okay. And it is okay that you decide that you're not going to change the system because it's not your responsibility to change the system. So the advice that I would give them now is there are a new group of, like a new generation of investors, accelerators, angel investors, software schools, for example, or initiatives where they're being deliberate and proactive in seeking out diverse founders or diverse engineers because it provides better results. It makes economic sense. Lean into that and write to me. I will help you out on Twitter. I'm Andres Barreto. It's super easy. And I will point you in the right direction. But it is changing. It's not fast enough, not large enough, but there's a few of us that are trying to change this. We just need to work together.
Absolutely. I put myself in that book as well. Andres, what gets you out of bed?
I get so much energy, and this sounds like beauty pageant, but I get so much energy from helping entrepreneurs and helping people that want to create technology. I get the energy from seeing how quickly somebody can go from the bottom quartile earners in their geography or in their market in terms of income and opportunity, and become a top 5% in their market opportunity within a few years because of technology, because they create a startup or because they learn how to create technology and they join the tech company. The change is super fast and it's mind-blowing. So that's what keeps me excited and keeps me doing what I'm doing. I've been doing for over 10 years.
That's amazing. And I suppose, like, what's the best advice you can give, I suppose, young entrepreneurs or people out there? I suppose our podcast is mostly aimed at people who really want to find out what careers they're into, or they may want a career change. Is there any kind of advice or habits that you do that you can share with them?
Yeah, I mean, career change is what I've been doing. So I went from trying to study engineering, ended up in journalism, created a media company, created a music company. Then I created an advertising agency. Then I created a VC fund. Then I created an alternative to a university. So I've been in all these industries. And each time that I go into an industry, I have no experience whatsoever. And I change frequently. It's not like I stayed in one area. I've done policy work in Latin America. So that political science that I studied that I thought I was never going to use, I actually ended up using to do policy work towards entrepreneurship and education in Latin America. So don't get overwhelmed thinking, what am I going to do for the rest of my life? Because the things that I've done, and when I go deep into an area, I do them for 2 to 4 years, and then I switch my career again and I do something else. And I think it was Mark Cuban that said this the other day, but I actually learned it from my father, is one superpower is just reading the manual. Nobody reads the user manual. But if you want to learn how to do anything, you just read the manual. Everything's there. And for me, that's YouTube. Everything's on YouTube. Everything's on Wikipedia. If you want to go into a particular industry, just read the manual. Somebody wrote a book about it, and probably that person has a lecture on it on YouTube. So don't get bogged down thinking, what am I going to do for the rest of my life? No, think about what are you going to do for the next 4 years or 2 years? And then in 2 years from now, 4 years from now, you can change your mind and do something else.
This is truly amazing. Andres, what are your habits that you can share with us?
I've been asked this question many times, and I have no habits, like the 7 habits of highly successful people. No, I have none. I don't wake up at a certain time. I don't eat a certain thing. I have no routines. It's all a mess all over the place. So I have no habit that anybody should replicate.
Come on, but for example, something I admire from you is the value you give to family. Probably that's a good habit.
Yeah, I mean, yes, that's a good habit. Maybe my wife says I need to do more.
I'll call Jess after this.
You can call her after this. It's debatable. And you know, for the audience who doesn't know, I've actually been working with my wife in different capacities for the last 10 years. So we work together, and I also work together with my father. So maybe that's a habit that people shouldn't replicate of, you know, working all the time with your family.
Yes, that's truly amazing. Andres, what are, in your opinion, you mentioned throughout this conversation quite a lot of skills, but if you were to summarize, what will be the skills to succeed in the 21st century, in your opinion?
It, like, the way I say it sometimes turns people off, especially if they work in my team or for me. I'm going to say it the impolite way and then see if we can make it sound wise. Figure it out. So I get asked like all the time, oh, Andres, how do I do this? How do you want me to do that? My answer is like, I don't know. Figure it out. I could read the manual on your behalf, and then I could look at examples and benchmarks on your behalf. And then I could tell you what I want and how to do it. Or you could figure it out on your own and read the manual, Google it, watch the YouTube tutorials, read the book, download the PDF version summary of the book, and just execute it, because that's how you learn. You learn by doing. And then the better way of learning beyond doing is you learn by doing and then teaching. So when I was learning how to be a venture capitalist or how to raise money, I would read the manual, then I would do it, And then I would do a workshop on it. And then I became an expert on raising capital, recruiting engineers. I read the manual, do it, and then teach it. And then I became an expert at that. Same thing for policies, same thing for advertising. Like anything I've ever done is figure it out, read the manual, watch your YouTube tutorials, the PDF summary of the book, or read the book, do it, and then teach it. Now you're an expert.
And before we go, I'd like to ask if you can tell us a bit about your experience with interns in your own companies or in the companies you have invested in.
It's been massive. If I had created a fund to invest in my interns rather than in my own company, I would have done a lot better. I've had interns that have raised $50 million after they go through my company. Actually, multiple of my interns, one of them sold their company to Walmart.
Wow.
So I should have done that instead, just giving money to my interns and to help them with their startups. Since my first company with GrooveShark, because I was 19, I was 18. So like interns were classmates. I've designed programs where the main goal is for the intern to learn something. The main goal is not for the company to get free labor or cheap labor. I'm going to create a curriculum for my interns to learn something that they can put in their resume. And then they can say, I did X, Y, and Z for X company, for Onsite, for Coderise, for Holbertson, for Techstars, for GrooveShark. And when I do that, the company benefits, of course, but then the interns become so successful that is the second layer of network that I now have of successful entrepreneurs that started being interns in my company. And now I can say, I work with them. And now I can say, hey, would you let me invest in your company? So I think it's a very important part. It's a great opportunity. And I feel like a lot of companies waste it by not designing a proper learning experience for their interns.
Andres, I've really enjoyed this chat, and I think you've given some excellent practical advice to anybody listening. I suppose, like, if you want to give us your Twitter again, and also tell us what's next.
So my Twitter, Andres Barreto on Twitter. If you mention me publicly, I answer fast. If you send me a direct message, I don't see them. I also discovered recently that I have a bunch of Instagram direct messages that I hadn't read. There was like a celebrity that I didn't realize that either. So when I saw their TikTok video that there's like a hidden messages on Twitter, like, oh my God, I checked it. And yes, of course, I had a bunch of stuff I had never seen. So Twitter's the easiest way. And then what's next is I'm always looking for entrepreneurs to back. If you're building a startup, hit me up on Twitter, and I'll hook you up with Techstars programs, or you can apply to my program. We're going to open up in the summer applications, but we run 6 times a year. Techstars has 50 programs spread out 6 times throughout the year, so I can hook you up. And other than that, if you still have not considered learning how to create technology, you must. That is the fastest way to get your goals or to get success in the least amount of time without requiring a strong network or money to get started. So if you want to learn how to code, also check us out at Holberton School, holbertonschool.com.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Andres. I really enjoyed this, and we look forward to having you again at some point in the future and see how things have evolved.
Thank you, Donna, for inviting me. Thank you, Paul. This has been very fun.
Wow, that was truly inspirational. I've known Andres for over 10 years, I think he mentioned, when we were in Startup Chile, and I've always admired him, but I think he gave quite a lot of great advice. What are your thoughts, Paul?
My thoughts are he was absolutely amazing. He gave great practical advice, which was amazing. And I've got a personal story I'll get onto now in a second. He said where you can, if you've got a startup, if you're listening and you're entrepreneurial and there's anything that you can even reach out to him. He gave his Twitter, and he's accepting applications. So if you're young, business minded, entrepreneurial spirit, you can reach out to Andreas and he'll give you some advice, which is absolutely amazing. But he also mentioned, and something I picked up on, was looking for tutorials on YouTube. I can tell you, like, it's nothing as fancy as or as spectacular as anything in tech. But when I lived in Australia for a while, I was traveling a bit and I got a job. Well, I just kept saying yes to jobs. Like, I had no idea what I was doing. And one of them was working on a bar, not in a bar, but on a construction of a bar. And they said, right, we want you to take up this and seal the floor. And I was like, okay, absolutely no problem. I'm just going to use the bathroom. And then I Googled how to do that. So maybe I Googled it, and then I looked at a YouTube video of somebody sealing the gaps between a floor, and I had no idea. So, yeah, YouTube is a powerful instrument in your favor.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the overall thing that I admire the most about, I've seen Andres doing interviews to startups, interviews to team members, and it's about ownership. Like, we all have the power of teaching ourselves. He always asks, like, what's your problem and how are you solving it? And it's that sense of ownership that we all have different dreams or struggles, and what are we doing to solve them? Because we can find information. It's pretty open. We are not in my dad's age where it was a lot difficult to get access to information. Now we have that. So what are we doing with that? I think is the message that I take away from this chat with Andres. But yeah, not to mention he's got an amazing family. I admire his wife deeply. Maybe we can have his wife in a future podcast, because she's really incredible as well. So yes, I hope that everyone enjoyed our chat today with Andres Barreto. Please feel free to let us know who would you like us to interview, what sort of subjects are you interested in. We always listen. And until next time, remind us, Paul, what are the ways that they can connect with us?
I love how I finished off, Joanna, with like a story of how I pretended I knew what I was doing, and then you took it to the serious part. That's absolutely amazing. But you can reach us at How to Be the Difference at theinterngroup.com or on social media at The Intern Group. And please make sure you rate and review the podcast wherever you get podcasts, because it really, really helps us a lot. More people can listen and more people can get some really great information like Andres gave us. So thanks a million.
Thank you. Until next time. Bye-bye.